Most of the places mentioned in Exodus are unknown. Scholars and investigators are still searching for the point at which the children of Israel might have crossed the Red Sea. No one knows where they might have first set foot in Sinai, and the location of the mystical Mount Sinai itself is the subject of relentless argument. Lately, however, modern technology has begun to have an impact on the discussion. Infrared satellite photography, for example, is helping to provide a clearer picture of the actual location of this fabled mountain.
With satellite infrared photography, there have been major archaeological discoveries found throughout the world. There's a trail that comes down the west branch of the Red Sea. The left-hand branch of it comes down to the tip of the Sinai Peninsula, stops there. It appears to come out the other side, and then wanders north to the highest mountain in the area, Jabal al-Lawz. And we did find what I think is important archaeological evidence that something took place at Jabal al-Lawz.
Larry Williams, who might best be described as an adventurer as opposed, say, to an archaeologist or scientist, enlisted the services of Robert Cornuke, a former policeman with a reputation for bravery, and the two men literally sneaked into Saudi Arabia and made their way to the mountain called Jebel el-Lawz on modern maps, but which 4 years earlier had been described as the real Mount Sinai by amateur archaeologist Ron Wyatt.
In 1988, we retraced the Exodus route from the tip of the Sinai Peninsula into Saudi Arabia, using the Bible and satellite imagery to find the actual route. Inland, 33 kilometers, we found the bitter springs of Marah mentioned in Exodus 15. This dirt sample from the springs has been chemically analyzed and was found to contain excessive iron and dissolved salts, making it very bitter. Continuing along the route, we came to the clear water springs mentioned in Exodus 15:27. Here, caves were being excavated by Saudi archaeologists. They said they had found the writings in these caves indicating that Moses had come through this area. The tomb of Jethro, the father-in-law of Moses, and Zipporah, the wife of Moses, were found in these caves.
And we did find what I think is important archaeological evidence that something took place at Jabal al-Lawz. We found at the base of this mountain 12 pillars, 18.5 feet in diameter. Why not 7? Why not 11? Why 12? With the 12 tribes of Moses fitting so perfectly into that scenario. Additionally, on the flat in front of this mountain, we found a large pile of rocks about 24 feet tall. There's a petroglyph of an Egyptian, not an Arabic drawing, but an Egyptian drawing of the golden calf. And additionally, at the base of the mountain, we found kind of a wing-shaped formation, foundation pointing towards the mountain. And there we found marble, round marble stones. This is some of the stone of it. This rock is not indigenous to that area of Saudi Arabia, let alone to Saudi Arabia.
An encampment area large enough for an estimated 1 to 2 million people is a major factor in determining the location of the real Mount Sinai. And a source of water for a group that large would be essential for an extended stay of even a month, let alone a year. But the Bible provides other clues as well. How does Jebel el-Lawz measure up in some of these more obscure requirements?
We found the top of the mountain to be black, as if the rocks had been burnt, possibly confirming biblical scripture that the Lord descended upon it in fire and smoke.
Archaeologists have identified another small footnote to the Mount Sinai argument having to do with the tablets of the law, or the Ten Commandments.
Unlike other law codes, such as the Code of Hammurabi, which was written on an 8-foot stela and stood out in the open air, the Ten Commandment tablets were portable and designed to be kept as a sacred treasure. Although ancient Egyptian and Babylonian stelas, tablets, and wall reliefs were usually done in limestone, basalt rock, or diorite, there is strong evidence that the Ten Commandment tablets were done in granite or marble, rock types that are found at the Jebel el-Lawz Mount Sinai site in Saudi Arabia.
Shortly after Cornuke and Williams visited the site, the Saudi government closed down the Jebel el-Lawz site to any foreign archaeological study. They also erected a chain-link fence and placed a military guard around the mountain to prevent even clandestine exploration of the site.
The Saudi government is in a very difficult political position. Because the Saudis had no sense of nationalism when the country was unified in the 1920s, the House of Saud used the theology of the Wahhabi sect of Islam to create national unity. Saudi Arabia is still run largely by a coalition between the royal family and the religious establishment. That religious establishment is very resistant to exploring anything archaeologically before Islam, a period they see as characterized by moral chaos. The other problem the House of Saud faces is external. If it allows archaeological excavations of ancient Israelite sites in Saudi Arabia, the House of Saud opens itself up to the anger of the Arab world.
The evidence for the real Mount Sinai being in Saudi Arabia appears to be overwhelming, but the ancient animosities are still preventing scientists and scholars from uncovering factual evidence that could settle the argument once and for all. And today's modern warriors are adding to the difficulty.
According to Howard Blum, in his book, The Gold of Exodus, any verification of Jebel el-Lawz is going to be very complicated. The mountain is not part of a $5.6 billion Saudi military installation called Operation Peace Shield. It was built with the approval of the U.S. Congress using U.S. contractors and Air Force personnel. Operation Peace Shield was originally designed as a radar installation in order to protect the kingdom against intruders. However, according to Blum, it has since been armed with missiles capable of hitting targets within Israel and Iraq. It is ironic that what some investigators believe to be the true Mount Sinai, the place where the law was given for the preservation of Israel, could potentially be used for the destruction of Israel.
Does this mean, then, that we may never really know whether or not this is the Mount Sinai on which Moses received the Ten Commandments? Or is there some hope for future exploration?
We need permission for a competent, trained archaeologist to go in and excavate and record the material carefully and submit it for review by other scholars, because there are too many gaps in our knowledge.
Whether or not this is proven to be the mountain where Moses stood in awe before the burning bush, there appears to be considerable evidence that Mount Sinai is located somewhere in northwestern Saudi Arabia. And if the Exodus account is true, that mountain will be blackened by heavenly fire. There will be evidence of a large and sometimes boisterous encampment, and perhaps, even as some have suggested, some remnant of the gold and jewels and other personal possessions the fleeing slaves were permitted to take with them. Proof positive of the exact location of Mount Sinai, it seems, is literally hidden behind armed guards of the Saudi government. But the earliest post-biblical Jewish sources from Palestine, the mid-2nd century Book of Jubilees, fragments of which were found among the Dead Sea Scrolls, gives a long and idealized description of world geography that suggests the author believed Mount Sinai to be in the Arabian Peninsula. But the clearest description in early Jewish literature of the location of Mount Sinai comes from the 1st century historian Josephus. He wrote that Mount Sinai is the highest of mountains in the region of the city of Madian. Towering 8,000 feet above the desert floor, Jebel el-Lawz certainly fits that description. But the sad fact is, in spite of all the evidence that has been accumulated, we really don't know. And indeed, we can't know for certain until competent archaeological excavations are once again permitted on the mountain itself. But the presence of a large Arab military installation on the mountain brings up an interesting question. If Jebel el-Lawz was proven to be the true Mount Sinai, and the Saudi military was using that strategic position to direct missiles into Israel, would the Israeli government destroy the Mountain of Moses? Until our next encounter with the unexplained, I'm Jerry Orbach.